Hello. Good evening. Welcome to First Fridays in the Exchange on Zoom. I'm Allison Gilmore, and I want to say a few thank yous. First of all, to Karen Schultz at First Fridays in the Exchange, who works so hard all year round. And just a reminder that even though a lot of the businesses and restaurants and galleries and artists are not doing in-person stuff right now in the Exchange, they are still trying to connect with people, so please check out our site. I also want to thank Collective Broadcasting Co., or as we call them, the other CBC, who help out with our tech. And finally, I want to thank our artists tonight, Peter Tittenberger and Chris Pancoe. And I also want to say to the audience out there, if you have a question or a comment at any time, you can just throw that into the live chat option and we will look out for it. Peter Tittenberger is a Winnipeg artist who worked for many years in photography and now works primarily in clay and wood. He has a BFA from the School of Art at the University of Manitoba, and he likes to make and do and think and talk, I hope. And Chris Pancoe is a Winnipeg mixed media artist who creates pottery, sculptures, and public art. He's a graduate of the U of M School of Art and holds an MFA from the University of Minnesota, and he is a ceramics and sculpture technician at the School of Art now. As a wilderness guide in northern Manitoba, which will come up later. Recently, they worked together on Peter's show Lure at the C2 Center for Craft, with Chris curating the exhibition of Peter's work. And we'll be talking about that project later tonight. So I just wanted to start with a couple of quotations about craft. So the word craft, when it first appeared in Old English, it signified an indefinable sense of knowledge, wisdom, and resourcefulness. Rediscovering craft will connect us with our human past, our sense of place, and our remarkable capacity to survive in the harshest of landscapes. And that's Alexander Langlands. He's a medieval archaeologist and the author of the book Craft. And then Carleen Madigan, who's the editor of the Backyard Homestead, says, crafting isn't just about creating beautiful, useful objects. It's about reclaiming the knowledge, wisdom, and power that link us to the collective history of civilization. Craft is what makes us human. So I thought we could maybe kick off the conversation by talking about why craft is important to both of you. So you both do sculptural work, but also make functional objects. And, you know, I think traditionally some people might have said, well, sculpture is art and functional objects are craft, but it's a lot more complicated than that, right? So let's just start by saying, maybe let's start with Peter. Why are you drawn to craft, and what does it mean to you?
Well, thank you for those definitions. And what struck me when I read those definitions were that both use the two words knowledge and wisdom, so sort of reclaiming the knowledge and wisdom of, I guess, human activity, or more generally just knowledge and wisdom. In what attracts me to craft is that I like to make work that is based on ideas that I have, things that I'm thinking about, and craft is the way that I express that in an objective form. So that's why craft is important to me, because it allows me to explore these ideas that I'm having, these things that I'm thinking about, and give it an outlet.
Okay. What about you, Chris?
Well, I gotta say it's very similar to what Peter just said. The first explanation of craft is the way that they described it as an undefinable way of creating objects, and I feel like even the term craft in and of itself is kind of been this word or this term that has been thrown into the art world just to confuse people and to basically spark conversation.
Like
And
this one.
exactly. So, making craft is something that I think, for the most part, honing a skill and building sort of that idea of craft and getting good at something is something that we all kind of strive for in some way, shape, or form. And for me, it happens to be building things and building things that can be both seen as useful in daily life. It seems really, it seems like a really something that I really enjoy doing, and also just the idea of thinking with your hands, and
that's a nice phrase.
Yeah. So.
Okay, and what about like during the pandemic? Not that everyone is, out there is working quite at the level of you fellas, but I think it seemed that a lot of people seem to be turning to things they could do with their hands and things that would give them a sort of palpable result. And sometimes I think just as a, they've been looking at screens all day maybe, and they just want that physicality and that satisfaction and maybe the stress relief of just losing yourself in trying to learn a skill. Like, have you found that you've worked more maybe even during the pandemic or differently, or?
Go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
Well, for me, my basic working situation hasn't really changed that much. I work at home. I have a studio at home, and so I'm sort of used to this environment, being at home all the time, and I work alone for the most part. So I'm not in a collaborative art situation, although many visual artists are. My work is basically done by me alone at home. So, it hasn't really affected me that much in terms of my making. Of course, it's affected the possibilities of showing work. But
yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to Lure, I guess, because that was a bit of a challenge. Yeah.
Well, I think craft kind of thrives in solitude in a lot of ways because it takes time and it takes concentration, and I think that as a result, people who make objects and make things, I think that really haven't skipped a beat in terms of how COVID has affected them. Like Peter, I have a studio at home, so it hasn't really changed anything. I guess when my actual job, my day job was shut down, it allowed me a little bit more time, but at the same time, I have a family and I'm a father and a husband, and there's a lot of other things going on too that sort of fill up that space because we're all at home.
Right.
So it's like I can't really just so yeah, it didn't really change. I still had to sort of carve out time for myself and work in the studio.
Okay. So let's start by looking at a couple of Peter's photo collages. And Peter and I go way, way back. And when I first knew Peter, he was working as a photographer. And this was, we go so far back, it's the analog days, right? And Peter, you when we were talking about this, you said that you really liked the hands-on stuff, and when photography went digital, you didn't find it as interesting. So let's look at some of your collages, if we could.
Yeah, these works basically are derived from SX70, which is a Polaroid camera. So these are 3-inch by 3-inch squares. And I started working on these in probably 1980, so whatever that is, 40 years ago. And I actually did a workshop with Lucas Samaras at that time. And so that's when I started getting interested in the SX70, which is a beautiful little camera and produces these wonderful prints. And then I started cutting them and collaging them. And these works I've been working on basically for the last 40 years. So I rework them and add and subtract and I cut away pieces. And it's sort of my working methodology still, in that I work with collage and assemblage and try to mix media and put things together. So this work, and I think there's another one that hopefully will pop up, are just two examples of working with these SX70s. And as you say, one of the things I really liked about photography was the hands-on aspect, especially in the darkroom, where I was doing a lot of black and white printing as well. And that's a very hands-on process. You can do a lot of hand manipulation. And so once that sort of left photography and everything became digital and all that manipulation became digital and on screen, that is of less interest to me than working with physical objects.
Okay. So I love the fact that they're layered, you know, physically layered, but layered obviously in terms of time too. Like if you've kind of been working over them for 40 years.
That's... Well, you look at some and you think, you know, that's just not finished, or, you know, it needs something, right? Tweak here and there, or you've come across another resource that you'd like to add to it. So,
Okay, and there's a layered quality to your wood pieces too, I think. Can we see some of those?
Yeah, whereas the Polaroids are basically two-dimensional, though they have layers. These wood pieces are really 3D, really three-dimensional, and you have to work all sides, as it were. And these pieces are primarily composed of piano parts. So at one point, somebody threw out a piano near a railway track in Point Douglas, and you know, it sort of smashed. And so I saw the inside of it, and the inside of a piano is a fabulous thing. And it's got you know, thousands and thousands of little components. So you know, I started taking these things apart, pianos apart, and getting down to each individual component, and then I start putting them together and create these sculptural objects.
Oh wow! Okay, so now the title makes sense, because you can't give away pianos now. Like there's all these people who, and there was one in our neighborhood that was just out and exposed to the elements for like months and just kind of falling apart in front of us.
Well,
and there's something so melancholy about it, but wow, okay.
Well, if you go on Kijiji, there's all sorts of pianos available for free.